Hey, what's ready? Welcome back to News Dose, and if you ever wondered how Xbox is doing on the PlayStation 5, well, we just got a ton of information today, and I think some of the results are rather surprising. I mean, some games are performing very well, but there are a few that maybe raises a little bit of concern, so I want to get into all of that today, plus plenty more. But first, I do want to thank my supporters on Patreon and on YouTube memberships. Thank you just so much for what you do, and you will receive this video through early access. Let's go get right into things, though, starting off with the Resident Evil Showcase. I mean, there were some rumors flying around the other day that they would maybe announce more than just Resident Evil 9, and, well, technically they did, but not necessarily in the way that some fans were maybe hoping. This instead was for things like the Switch 2 controller, some new amiibo, and the addition of NVIDIA GeForce Now. I mean, all of those things are still very welcome, but again, no, not a new game like some people were hoping, but personally, I think that just makes sense. It's why I said the other day that I would go in with low expectations, because I don't really see a reason for Capcom to announce a new game before the launch of Resident Evil 9. Instead, their main focus is likely going to be just to hype the release of Resident Evil 9, and if anything else, I think they did a really good job at this showcase of doing that. I mean, they revealed gameplay for both Leon and Grace, and they confirmed that Leon's section will play more like a refined version of Resident Evil 4. They focused a lot on his weapons and his more action-based combat, whereas Grace's section, her section plays more similar to something like Resident Evil 2. So it's going to be more methodical and slow-paced because it focuses more on the horror elements of Resident Evil. I mean, honestly, I think that sounds pretty amazing on paper. Resident Evil 2 and 4 are arguably the two best entries in the entire franchise, and 9 is basically combining both of those into one single game. Now, with that said, I'm sure fans are going to be split on which section they prefer more, but this game really could shape up to be the best Resident Evil game possibly since Resident Evil 4. Either which way, though, I mean, this game continues to be my most anticipated title of the year. It looks absolutely fantastic. Now, Life is Strange is also going to get a new entry sometime in 2026. This was another victim from a rating board leak, which we talked about that a few weeks back, but today they made it official. You can see their tweet here, which reads, "Separate the real from the rumor. Join us for the exclusive reveal of the next Life is Strange game. It'll air on January 20th at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time or 1 p.m. Eastern Time." So, there you go. I know there's some die-hard fans for this series out there, but I also kind of feel like it's a series that's never really topped the first game. So I do kind of feel like they have a lot to prove in whether or not they can actually replicate that experience from a quality standpoint. But hey, we'll learn a lot more here in the next week when it gets its full reveal. Of course, I'll keep you updated, especially if we get a release date. Oh, and the Nintendo Switch 2 continues to dominate in Japan, to the point it almost feels like they have very little competition in that region. A lot of that is because PlayStation doesn't focus on Japan as much as they should, but nonetheless, the Switch 2 has now reached 4.1 million units, which is an important number because that means it has surpassed the GameCube, which sold approximately 4.04 million units in Japan. Even more so is that the Switch 2, in less than a year, is only 2 million back from the PlayStation 5, which is currently sitting at 6.1 million with the PS5 and PS5 Pro combined. I mean, again, that's kind of the result of, first off, not having a handheld console, which Japan loves, but also the fact that Nintendo makes Japanese-centric games, whereas PlayStation, they really kind of got away from that. But nonetheless, one of those would be, of course, be Pokemon Legends ZA, which has already sold 2.6 million physical units in the region. So, pretty incredible stuff, but I will say that the majority of that is still on the Switch 1, having sold 1.6 million units. And that's important to understand because that means if the next generation of Pokemon is exclusive to the Switch 2, then that means the Switch 2 is going to fly off shelves in droves. Either which way, though, big congrats to Nintendo for seemingly securing their home region for yet another generation. All right, now let's just go and talk about Xbox on PlayStation, though, because, I mean, there's obviously been a lot of discussion about Xbox's multi-platform strategy and whether or not it's actually worth it for them. I mean, of course, they still have consoles, which produces money from third-party games sold and subscriptions. And by having less exclusives, that's less reason to buy into Xbox hardware. So there's been some concern about that online because, yes, there is a give and take with this type of strategy. And I think that's why it's interesting to see this type of data, because Alinea Analytics dropped a ton, and I mean a ton, of information about how some of their newer games have been selling on the PlayStation 5. And I'll just go ahead and drop the infographic here, but right away, before we even get started, just kind of keep in mind that there are a few notable games that aren't included on this list. We already know from previous reports that Forza Horizon 5 has sold 5 million copies on the PlayStation 5. Sea of Thieves is around 2 million copies sold, and then Grounded is right around 500,000 copies sold. So those three games have actually sold incredibly well on the PlayStation 5. But as you can see here, so too has a lot of other games. I mean, Oblivion at 1.1 million units is obviously the big winner here, which, to be fair, I think is to be expected. I mean, Oblivion is one of the most beloved RPGs of all time, and despite some of the hysteria this generation with Bethesda RPGs from PlayStation fans, PlayStation does actually have a lot of Bethesda fans. I mean, we've seen that from previous Bethesda RPGs as well, and this just kind of continues that trend. So I think this just kind of speaks to that, and we could actually see a very similar trend when Starfield eventually launches on a PlayStation 5, because that will eventually happen. I don't think there's a question of if it'll happen. It's more of a when, and likely fairly soon at that, if you believe rumors. Now, with that said, I think that if the Oblivion Remaster was better handled, then it probably would have actually sold even more copies. I mean, this report did mention that around half of the people who have played Oblivion Remastered on the PlayStation 5 did not progress beyond 15 hours, and that kind of tells us that a lot of people likely didn't see it worth finishing, which I think is just so unfortunate. I mean, the original is one of my all-time favorite RPGs, but I think a lot of the reason that people stop playing the remaster early is because of its performance and the hope that they'll eventually fix it. I mean, we'll see about that. But Gears of War Reloaded also put up some good numbers, sold around 800,000 units across Xbox, PC, and the PlayStation 5, with 572,000 of that number coming directly from the PS5 itself. So it seems like there's a lot of curiosity for the Gears of War series on PlayStation. Now, it has been pointed out that maybe some of that comes from older Xbox 360 gamers that eventually shifted over to PlayStation's platform and just missed the series. But either which way, I mean, it's good to see Gears of War perform well. I mean, it's a top 3 franchise for me of all time, so I'm always glad to see it perform well. If anything, though, I think Xbox still needs to do some ports for Gears of War 2 and 3. That way, PlayStation 5 fans can catch up to some of the newer entries if they also want to sell those on PlayStation. Now, Indiana Jones and Doom: The Dark Ages also put up, I'd say, solid numbers, though I will say that I'm more impressed by Indiana Jones than I am for Doom, because for one, Indiana Jones was a staggered release for the PlayStation 5. Staggered releases don't always sell well, but it did sell an additional 493,000 units, which I'd say is pretty decent, especially for a franchise that isn't known for its gaming IP, whereas Doom: The Dark Ages, on the other hand, has seemingly performed below expectations. It is selling slower than Doom Eternal, and you have to kind of wonder if that's maybe because of its $70 price tag, or if it's just Doom fatigue. Now, I'm just going to go ahead and assume here that it's more so because of it being $70, but it is selling below expectations as of this time. That's what we currently know. Now, when it comes to Flight Simulator and the Age series, their numbers might not necessarily pop off the charts here, but these results are actually fairly decent considering these games are on the niche side of things for console players. These are much more PC-centric games, so when you're selling an extra 100 to 200,000 units per game, that's really just gravy for these franchises. So that's why I'm going to say that this is actually fairly decent, all things considering. But I can't really make the same excuse for Ninja Gaiden 4 and The Outer Worlds 2. I mean, Ninja Gaiden 4 at 206,000 copies sold does seem a little bit low, considering this is a big AAA game, but I do have hope that it will pick up over time with discounts in the future. But as for The Outer Worlds 2 at just 135,000 copies, I mean, if you remember right, Xbox originally priced this game at $80. And I think these numbers kind of tells us why they reverted back to $70. It's just not selling the way that they were hoping it would. And okay, maybe Game Pass has something to do with that, but you should still expect a lot more than just 135,000 units on a console that has sold 80 plus million consoles. And just to add to that, it hasn't exactly been lighting up the charts on Steam either. And I mean, it reviewed fairly well with an 83 overall score, but just for whatever reason, there doesn't seem to be a huge fan base for The Outer Worlds 2, which I think is a bit surprising. You know, the first game sold very well, and again, the sequel did actually review well, but it's just not selling a ton of units. Now, you never know, though. It might pick up over time, again, maybe with some discounts and things like that, but I think Xbox might want to reconsider their $70 games if this trend continues. I mean, we'll see what happens, but there you go. This is how Xbox is performing on the PlayStation 5, and I think for the most part, they're probably fairly happy outside of a few games. What do you think about these results, though? Are you impressed or not? Anyways, though, that's going to be it for this episode, but until next time, make sure to subscribe, ring that bell, and peace out.